Hi guys, so Lord Frost, the former Brexit negotiator, the one who got Boris Johnson his oven-ready deal, he appeared on Nick Ferrari's show to trash, once again, his quote-unquote deal. Now he called it a deal, Boris Johnson called it a deal, but in reality it's the withdrawal agreement, the accord between the UK and the EU on how to leave the bloc. It had to be agreed and signed before negotiations could begin on a trade deal between the two. Now, before we hear from the typical rubbish and lies from Lord Frost, I think it's important to remember what his boss Boris Johnson said about the deal back in 2019 as it had just been signed.
And I do think that this deal represents a very good deal both for the EU and for the UK. And it's a reasonable, fair outcome and reflects the large amount of work that's been undertaken by both sides. And I agree very much, Jean-Claude, with what you said about protecting the peace process in the island of Ireland and in Northern Ireland. And, of course, for us in the UK, it means that we can deliver a real Brexit that achieves our objectives. And it means that the UK leaves whole and entire on October the 31st. And
Okay, let's ignore October the 31st because that changed later on. But Boris Johnson saying the UK as a whole, including Northern Ireland, leaves. Well, a lot of Brexiteers in Northern Ireland might disagree with you on that.
First, and it means that Northern Ireland and every other part of the UK can take part not just in free trade deals, offering our tariffs, exporting our goods around the world, but it also means that we can take together as a single, united kingdom, decisions about our future, about our laws, our borders, our money, and how we want to run the UK. And those decisions will be taken in the UK by elected representatives of the people of the UK. And I hope very much now, speaking of elected representatives, that my fellow MPs in Westminster do now come together to get Brexit done, to get this excellent deal over the line.
This excellent deal over the line. Excellent deal. Well, as I said, Lord Frost had a different opinion of this excellent deal. This was him speaking to Nick Ferrari.
I don't envy you having to wade through the amount of trees they cut down for the documents you had to read and the ink that was on them. But one problem, you have actually referenced it twice now, Lord Frost, Northern Ireland. It didn't work, did it?
It isn't working. We had to take the decisions we did back in 2019 because Parliament had removed the option of leaving without a deal. The Constitution was being shredded. We had to deliver the referendum results. So
the Constitution was being shredded. We had to leave with a deal. We weren't allowed to leave without a deal. The situation in Northern Ireland... So, a border had to be put somewhere. You agreed with the EU to put the border in the Irish Sea. Now, it wasn't necessary to have a border, but you and Boris Johnson decided, no, we want a harder type of Brexit than the one that Theresa May had agreed with the EU. The backstop. Okay, we didn't want that. We wanted a harder type of Brexit. So the border had to go somewhere. Well, if you put it on the island of Ireland, then it would have eventually been in breach of the Good Friday Agreement. So where else do you put it? Well, you have to put it in the Irish Sea. And this is what he refers to as not working. He agreed to this. Once again, it wasn't necessary. The UK as a whole could have remained within the single market and the customs union, and it wouldn't have been necessary to have a border. But him and Boris Johnson wanted to have a border.
Necessarily the deal in 2019 was imperfect. We thought that it would work. We knew we were taking a risk. There was a lot in it we didn't want but was imposed on us.
Boris Johnson described it as fantastic, wonderful, marvellous. And now you're saying, well, it was a lot of things, it was imperfect, a lot of things were imposed upon us. Then why did you agree to it? Why did you say, no, we can't agree to these. Now, his argument is, well, Parliament forced us to, to agree to something. But there had to be an agreement. Now, the EU had said, look, we can extend this. We can extend the negotiations for the withdrawal agreement. And you said, no, we don't want to extend the negotiations for the withdrawal agreement. Boris Johnson forced his government to sign these agreements within a time frame. It wasn't necessary, but Boris Johnson forced the government to sign the agreements within a time frame. That was not necessary. The EU was willing to extend the negotiations, but Lord Frost and Boris Johnson didn't want to do that. They wanted to leave as soon as possible.
Unfortunately, it hasn't had the careful handling that it should have. And
by whom?
By the EU.
By the EU. Blame everyone else. You're the one who signed it. Why did you sign it if you were not happy with it? Why didn't you resign? Why you say, look, sorry, Boris Johnson, I can't agree to this. I'm going to resign. Find someone else to do it. But he didn't. Isn't that curious? Isn't it curious that Lord Frost negotiated it, signed it, sold it to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson sold it to the public. We've seen it here. Okay, wonderful deal. Sold it to the public as this marvelous deal, and now sometime later, Lord Frost is saying it was imperfect. It was terrible. It undermines Northern Ireland's position in the UK. It has to go.
The decision to try and activate Article 16 at the beginning of 2021 was a big problem. The decision to impose a vaccine border in January, albeit briefly, was a problem, and it's destroyed.
I don't even think this warrants a response.
The moral basis of the protocol. It's very clearly undermining the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. We're going to have serious...
How? I wish Nick Ferrari would actually put on his journalism cap for a moment and ask Lord Frost, how is it undermining the Good Friday Agreement? Please tell me, explain, give us the details. This is what really frustrates me about these journalists. They do not ask him simple questions. He's just allowed to spew a lot of rubbish and he's not confronted on it. He has continually said it has undermined the Good Friday Agreement. And I've yet to hear a journalist ask him, explain to us how that happens. How is that the case?
Difficulties, I think, in the political situation in Northern Ireland after the elections, and I think it is obvious that the protocol as it currently stands cannot survive.
Businesses in Northern Ireland, look, the protocol is not perfect, but Brexit is an absolute disaster. It's mitigating the damage of Brexit. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's doing its job. A fire extinguisher may not put out the entire fire, but it's doing its job. You don't say, well, let's throw away the fire extinguisher because there's a fire. Well, these people actually started the fire and are ignoring the fire, but are complaining about the fire extinguisher.
It must be renegotiated, or the government must act unilaterally. And
either this guy is an idiot, or he's lying. He's trying to confuse people. You do not renegotiate the Northern Ireland Protocol because the Northern Ireland Protocol is part of the withdrawal agreement. So you would need to renegotiate the withdrawal agreement. And if you want to renegotiate the withdrawal agreement, then you have to go to the EU and present something better. First of all, you have to explain how it's not working. And you haven't explained that. And you haven't been challenged on that. You haven't actually been questioned. How is it not working, Lord Frost? Please explain. Give us some details. No, that's not happening. He's just allowed to say, yes, it's not working. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. He hasn't explained how it's not working. He hasn't explained how he would fix it. Present something that would be viable as a solution to the problem, but you haven't presented the problem yet. But let's imagine he's presented the problem. Okay, what is your solution to the problem? Let's see if it's viable. Well, you haven't got to stage 1, so we can't get to stage 2. He's trying to sell the idea that he has a solution to it, but he can't tell you what it is, and nobody will actually ask him what it is. Yes, somebody may say the command paper, but the European Union have said that's unviable, so you need to come up with something else. If you want to renegotiate it, you need to find something better than the protocol. Well, you have nothing.
I simply don't understand why the EU will not renegotiate it.
Because you're an idiot. That's why they're not renegotiating, because you have not presented something better. Present something better than the protocol. Then they can look at it and say, this is better than the protocol. Then let's renegotiate the protocol. Well, actually, they won't renegotiate the protocol. They will renegotiate the withdrawal agreement. Why is this so difficult to understand? Obviously, once again, I say obviously because I think he's not a complete and utter idiot, but maybe he is a complete and utter idiot. Really, is it he's stupid, he's ignorant, or he's lying? He's a charlatan. Which is it? I'm confused. That's why I would actually like to speak to him, and I'd actually ask him these simple questions. Explain to me what is wrong with the protocol. Give us some examples of how it's not working. Then let's hear some examples or explanations or solutions, I should say, to those actual problems. And let's see if it can be fixed in that way. Because a lot of there are problems with the protocol, but the solutions are contained within the framework of the protocol. We've seen it before. Businesses in Northern Ireland said, look, we have these problems. They met with the EU, and the EU presented some solutions, and the business community in Northern Ireland said, well, that's really good. Yes, they solved those problems. They're working within the framework without dumping the protocol. But Lord Frost doesn't do that. He says, yes, there are these problems, but I'm not going to actually tell you what they are. And we need to come up with solutions, but I'm not actually going to tell you what the solutions are either. And the way to get to these solutions is to renegotiate.
And move on to a more collaborative relationship with us as we all want. But
why would somebody want to collaborate with somebody who's dishonest? Why would anyone want to collaborate with you, Lord Frost? You're dishonest here, or you're stupid. Which is it? Because I don't know. Honestly, I'm being honest here. I do not know if he's ignorant or he's lying. He doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's a charlatan. Because there are only two possibilities here. He didn't read the withdrawal agreement. He didn't read the Northern Ireland Protocol. He doesn't understand the Good Friday Agreement, or he's pretending not to. Can someone tell me? Because I have no idea. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.